Hello, I'm really glad that you are listening to the next edition of the vlog on KabbalahWisdom.org. My friends, what if Moses came to you and said, guys, I know you've been living in hell, 210 years of slavery, back-breaking labor, children getting murdered, no end in sight, but God sent me to free you. So you get this initial euphoria, and then Moses goes to Pharaoh, and it gets worse. Instead of back-breaking labor, there's crushing labor. Would you trust that Moses was sent by God? Well, the Jewish people are a wise nation, and they did not trust because the facts were against them. And yet, what actually did occur was Moses did take them out. They just had to trust a little bit more. And the same thing is in our generation. Every generation, as the Kabbalah teaches, has a reincarnation of Moses. And this divine soul sees not only earth, but also heaven. And there's a great story that the Baal Shem Tov once wrote a letter to his brother-in-law, Reb Gershon Kutavayer, who was in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel. And the Baal Shem Tov said to him that for something that he had done, there was going to be a punishment meted out against him in heaven. And initially, I think it was meant to be death, but I prayed on your behalf, he said, and they meted it to become 2 or 3 months of blindness. And Reb Gershon Kutavayer wrote back a letter, and you can imagine that those days it took a couple months for letters to get from Israel back. And he said, everything you said is true. However, I'm quite astonished because when you sent the letter, it was before the story happened. So the Baal Shem Tov wrote back to him, time begins in the primordial thought of God. Before creation, there was no time. Time is obviously connected to the physical. It's about the rotation of the planet. An hour is 1/24 of the spin. And so, quite simply speaking, time is a creation. Before there was time, there was no time. And so therefore, everything that would occur, God envisioned in the primordial thought. So that's like the CD that has everything that will ever occur. But there are 4 spiritual worlds above us. And as you go through these worlds, time sort of begins to slow down until it comes to our world where it's experienced in the way we experience it. But I believe he said it was the world of Yetzirah, which is 2 heavens above us. That time happens there 20, 30 years before. In other words, what I am saying to you, I said 20, 30 years ago in that world, and you're hearing it, and the effect that it's having happened 20, 30 years ago in that world. So, in other words, the Baal Shem Tov was able to perceive what happened. He prayed on his behalf, and he dealt with it prior. There are many stories where people would write letters to the Rebbe, and these letters would go from Israel. This is when it took a week to send a letter. You would imagine to answer a letter takes a day, and to send a letter back, it would take a week. But yet they would get a reply within a week. In other words, the Rebbe saw what was going on before it happened and replied to it. And there are many, many countless stories like this. So the Rebbe has come to us and he has told us, my friends, the Moshiach is about to come. The long-awaited Messianic redemption. The whole world is not history, it is destiny. Everything was predestined. And what the Kabbalists are telling us is that the Messiah, literally the transformation of the entire world in a Messianic way, is about to occur. And we have 2 options. One option is do nothing, and when it happens, clap and dance. And the second option is a far greater option. And that option is that as the Rebbe says, when Moshiach comes, he is going to say to each person, thank you for the mitzvahs, for the good deeds you did that brought me. Now I want you to imagine that the Moshiach is here and he tells you, thank you for the good that you did that brought me. How will you feel? And the only example that I can give is there's a famous analogy that a man gets shipwrecked and it's dark and it's nighttime and he's on an island and a beach. And he hears a voice from heaven that says, pick up the stones. Tomorrow you will be glad, but you will be sad. Well, it's a bit of a bizarre voice. And so he takes a couple of rocks and he puts it into his pocket. And then a rescue team finds him and he gets onto the boat. He's happy to get home. And tomorrow comes and he opens his eyes to look at what's in his pockets. And he saw the most exquisite diamonds that he could ever find.